Got a nice little robot lady introducing us. Recording is in progress. We're gonna give an awkward 30 seconds to a minute to allow folks to roll on in, and then we'll get started. I mean, y'all can schmooze.
No, that's unprofessional. I'm locked in.
No
Totally.
schmoozing allowed.
I just put my baby down, so I'm like in kickback mode. I got a beer, so like I'm in a fantastic mood right now. Yeah.
Very pretty can. What are we drinking?
Yeah, what's the
So
can check?
here is from Long Beach Island, New Jersey.
Nice.
They've got a macro brewery there called the Ship Bottom Brewery. This is just their straight up lager. It's good, and each beer is named after certain symbols on Long Beach Island. So this one's for the lighthouse there. So
Are you
I
guys
also-
an LBI family?
what's that? I'm sorry.
Are you an LBI family? I had friends in high school whose families
Yeah.
had places there. I always liked it.
Yeah. So my grandparents, they got a place back in the 70s when it was still only a parking lot. So we've been actually going there for almost half century now. So it's been awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
I also have a nautical themed beer, an island ocean
All right, I
beer.
think we'll do this thing.
All right, enough beer chat.
I don't have a beer with me, but I'm still in a good mood.
You
so.
have to be the adult in the room here.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's live online author event with Greenlight Bookstore. I'm Kay from Greenlight, and I'm excited to welcome you to our online event series, Squawkin Sports, hosted by Patrick Sauer and David J. Roth. For this installment, they'll be chatting with Timothy Bella about his new book, Barkley, a Biography. So you're in for an excellent time. Before we start, I just want to say a huge thanks to Timothy, to Patrick, and to David for making this happen, and to all of you for showing up. We're grateful for your support. Couple of quick housekeeping things. In our Zoom webinar tonight, you can see and hear the speakers, but they can't see or hear you. They can see that you're here though, and there are a couple of different ways you can interact with the authors and with each other throughout tonight's event, which we highly encourage. The first is the chat, which you can find by clicking on the icon that looks like one speech balloon. It's a great way to show your appreciation for the authors and interact with your fellow attendees. If you have a specific question you'd like to have answered by the authors, please post that question in the Q&A module. You can find it by clicking on the icon that looks like two speech balloons. We'll be pulling questions only from the Q&A to be answered in the later part of the program. And importantly, tonight's featured book is available for sale from Greenlight Bookstore. You can shop in person. There it is. Look at that. It's like an impressive, intimidating cover. You can shop in person at either of our stores from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Fulton Street and Flatbush Ave, where you can purchase Timothy's book as well as many others on site. You can also order online at greenlightbookstore.com for a quick pickup at the store or for shipping anywhere in the US. And I'll put the buy link in the chat. As thanks for attending tonight's virtual event, we are offering 10% off the featured book. Just enter coupon code GreenlightEvents10 into the coupon discount section at online checkout. Your series hosts for Squawkin Sports are Patrick Sauer and David J. Roth. And it's an excellent stocking stuffer. Is it able to fit in a stocking?
No, and I apologize for that. It's too thick, but yeah, it just you can do the awkward thing where like it sticks out of the stuffing and it shows his face just staring at you. So that too, yes, very good.
Cool. Well, Patrick has written for many large publications. Patrick, give us a wave. Which one of you is Patrick? There's Patrick with a Christmas galore in the background. Many large publications you've heard of, and even more small ones that no longer exist. He's a founding member of the Billings, Montana to Brooklyn sports writing pipeline. Very specific. David, hello David, was an editor at Deadspin and is now a co-founder and co-owner at defector.com. His writing has appeared in The New Republic, The New Yorker, Food and Wine, and The Bachelor. Tonight, they will be talking with featured author and new dad, like a new dad, your brand new dad.
9 months old, so yeah.
Wow.
I go back to work on Tuesday. Ugh. Anyway, sorry.
Anyway, no, I'll just brag about you for a sec, so you can just buckle up for a minute. Featured author Timothy Bella. Tim is a staff writer and editor at the Washington Post. His work has been published in the New York Times, Esquire, The Atlantic, New York Magazine, Rolling Stone, Vanity Fair, CNN.com, Vice. I'm running out of breath here. Gosh. ESPN's Enscape, formerly The Undefeated, and other outlets. Bella has also was the lead researcher for the New York Times bestsellers, Tiger Woods and The System, both by Jeff Benedict and Armin Katayan. Bella has a master's from Columbia Journalism School, where he was a Stabile fellow? Stabile,
yes, yeah.
Stabile.
I like Stabile better, actually. So, yes.
Well, I'll let them know that that's how I think it should be pronounced. Passionate, candid, iconoclastic, and gifted both on and off the court, Charles Barkley has made a lasting impact on not only the world of basketball, but pop culture at large. With a new book, Barkley, a Biography, Timothy Bella introduces us to the real Charles that few people knew, starting from his early years struggling to fit in before he found a sense of community and purpose in basketball, taking us up to the height of his legendary career and beyond. Informed by over 370 original interviews and painstaking research, Bella's Barkley is the most comprehensive biography to date of one of the most talked about icons in the world of sports. Library Journal calls it the definitive account of Barkley's life so far, essential reading for all basketball fans. So I think you're in for an excellent time tonight, and I will hand it over to y'all to get started.
Take it away, Tim.
Thanks, guys. Awesome being here. I'm going to start by reading an excerpt from a book. If anyone remembers the time that Charles threw a guy through the bar window in Orlando, here's kind of the whole story to that. Charles had settled into Phineas Fogg's at Church Street Station, the entertainment district in downtown Orlando, with Clyde Drexler and 5 or 6 young female friends at around 11 p.m. on October 25th, 1997. Known for its stained glass windows, top 40 playlist, and nickel beer night, incredible, Phineas Fogg made the area at the time a premier destination for party people of all backgrounds looking to have fun or make really bad choices. In town for a preseason game against the Orlando Magic the next night, Charles and Drexler posted up at a popular bar to unwind on a Sunday night, which meant the guard kept to himself while Charles signed autographs, took photos, and bought drinks for strangers who actually wanted to buy him beer. While there, the two ran into Gilbert Feliciano, a 32-year-old Spanish reggae performer whom they had met through actor Wesley Snipes. The players asked Feliciano to actually join them. Also at the bar was Jorge Pugo, who was not of legal drinking age, but had partied with 6 packs of beer all day with a group of friends following a big soccer match. A 22-year-old construction laborer, Pugo was essentially living on the streets when he wasn't trying to make whatever money he could to send back to his family. He was also undocumented and had been arrested 10 times in the city, according to the Orlando Sentinel, including one time in which Pugo allegedly told police that his name was Pancho Villa. It was about 1:45 a.m. and almost closing time. Jeffrey Williams, an off-duty cop working at the bar that night, recalled that all seemed calm as people were exiting. In the middle of his police academy training, Jerry Colon had gone out to get his mind off the grueling program and happened to find himself next to Charles's table. Feliciano said the conversation that night was filled with basketball and laughter. Well, that was about to change. Suddenly, Feliciano noticed that when Hugo and his group took to be exiting the bar, ice cubes were flung at the table where Charles and his friends were sitting, not hitting anyone, but bothering the women standing around the NBA legends. Hexler and other witnesses said the action was unprovoked. Feliciano recalled one of the women asking Charles, "You're going to let these motherfuckers throw ice at you?" Among those in Charles's group that night was Karen Carrington, an 18-year-old from Deltona. Like Lugo, Carrington, as well as Texas Liba, were at the bar despite being underage. Carrington recalled how Charles sought to avoid a confrontation with Lugo, who she claimed was cursing at them. Charles's reasoning for avoiding conflict was that the group was clearly having fun, chanting so loudly that they were disrupting the entire bar, Feliciano said. Charles grabbed me. He said, "Leave it alone. You're just trying to cause problems," Carrington said. Then Hugo allegedly threw a glass of ice at Charles and the women, according to what the player told authorities. Multiple witnesses would say Hugo was not the one who threw the glass of ice, and Hugo later said it was one of his friends who had tossed it at Charles. The glass struck Carrington in her jaw and knocked her off her chair, she told police. She got really upset and said, "Screw it. If you're not going to do shit, I'm going to do something," Feliciano said. A ruckus broke out, and two of the women stormed through the club in pursuit of Hugo and his group. After Drexler said something to Charles, Feliciano recalled, the power forward got up and blazed past onlookers to chase down Hugo, who, at 5'2" and 110 pounds, was at least 14 inches shorter. He was running for his life, Malone said of Lugo. Lugo, the last of his friends to exit Phineas Foggs, was grabbed on his way out by the off-duty police officer, Williams, who then realized Charles had a hold of Hugo's left arm. "Charles, I will handle this." "Let go," Williams said. "Charles, let me take care of this." "I will not hurt him," Charles assured the officer. "I just want to talk to him." By this time, a large crowd had gathered at the front of the bar to see what Charles was going to do. Feliciano had followed Drexler and the women outside. Charles looked over to his shoulder as one of the women publicly challenged him in front of an increasingly rabid crowd. "You're not going to do shit. You're nothing but a big-ass pussy." The taunt set Barkley off. Williams reached for his radio to call for backup, according to the police report. As he released his grip, he felt Hugo escape. Except Hugo hadn't gotten away at all. "I felt the victim being pulled from my grasp," Williams wrote. "I looked up and saw Charles Barkley holding the victim up in the air by his arms." Cologne heard Charles repeat a question twice to Lugo. "Do you know who the fuck I am? Do you know who the fuck I am?" In a matter of seconds, Charles chucked Hugo through the glass window. Cologne told reporters that Charles had approached Hugo and flung him like he was a toy. Police later concluded that Hugo had, in actuality, been thrown into a large mirror, which then ended up smashing through the plate glass window, followed by Hugo himself. Amid the roaring applause from the satisfied crowd, Williams pulled Charles away from Hugo, who had slumped on the ground. A piece of glass from the broken window had struck an artery in Hugo's right arm instead of Feliciano, and blood flowed from the wound like a fountain. You got what you deserved, Charles taunted. You don't disrespect me. I hope you're hurt. Williams thought he just separated Barkley from Hugo, but he was again wrong. For all I care, you can lay there and die, Charles said.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. So it's worth noting that that is not the best that Charles Barkley comes off in this book.
No,
But I think it's a good thing to start, good place to start, because had the guy not been seriously injured, then it's the epitome of what makes Barkley Barkley. In a lot of ways, because being the man of the people, he's out drinking, some guy's messing with him. It's kind of funny, this whole thing started over ice. But he was 10 times that guy's size, so yeah, he's lucky that guy didn't die.
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a lot of charmed life shit in this book. And there's some darker stuff too. But yeah, this is one of the moments in there that sort of grabs you because you're like, it wasn't like this was the worst decision that Charles Barkley had necessarily made in the book. And we're like, it's a 500-page book. We're probably 3/4 of the way through when this moment happens. He has gotten away with a lot, I think, mostly because of the fact that he's such a delightful human being, except for when he's throwing someone who is smaller than my wife through a window in a bank shot styley. It's a complicated thing.
Well, I want to read something. This I think sums up basically what the book is I think there's sort of 3 parts of it. One, he's very underrated or underappreciated as a basketball player. 2, I think people forget that he was a poor kid who went through a lot growing. Like, you forget that the biggest media guy going was once sort of a normal fat kid who had a lot of problems growing up. But his public persona since his basketball playing days, this is a quote from Bomani Jones. And he says, "We allow him," I assume he was talking about Black people, but maybe just all of us, "we allow him to say things that are dead wrong and come back largely because we believe in the goodness of his intentions." And that kind of sums up Barkley's charmed life. Like you say, it's really remarkable. This book's remarkable because he does scrape about as close to ruining everything as you can, but also comes out as like your fun-loving uncle who doesn't want to hang out with Charles Barkley.
Yeah, it's definitely, if this was just like a novel from the 19th century about some like bumptious hero who constantly is getting into and out of trouble, it would just be like, the language would be different. The narrative is basically so this is it's a fun book. We should say that off the top here.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate
The thing
that.
I want to know first is that, like, so this is, as the cover says, like, I think pretty much Barkley himself has written 3 or 4 books, or, sort of had written for him. He claimed to be misquoted in the first one of them.
You sure did.
Yeah, but this is really like the first in-depth Barkley biography. He didn't talk to you for it. How do you begin to take on a challenge like telling the story of this kind of life, so much of which has been in public, which has so incredibly much incident in it? Like, not just in terms of like, help your agent helping you shape the pitch. You can talk about that if you want. I just mean, like, where do you even fucking begin? Like,
Because there's no mystery. There's no mystery, right? Like, I mean, the last 2 people we had, and Bo Jackson and Ricky Henderson biographies, there's some mystery there, or at least they were not what their public persona is. Charles seems the opposite. He is pretty much exactly what his persona is. So I didn't mean to cut Dave off, but that was my first question too. There's so much out there. He's so public. How do you begin to, I guess, cut away? You know, it's almost like cutting away the fat from the beginning. Like, how do you go about that? I was curious about that too.
It's a great question, and to borrow some language from the excerpt, it was a big ass challenge. I mean, it was something in which I was forced to just kind of step back and get organized and figure out, okay, we've been watching this guy on our TV screens for almost 4 decades now. What is something new or something that hasn't been dug into as much that I can bring to this project? And if not for my work on Harmon and Jeff's book on Tiger Woods, I honestly don't think I would have been able to organize this and actually go about this in such a methodical way, honestly. And for me, guys, it all started just going back to Leeds, Alabama, his hometown, and just figuring out a family life and an upbringing and a background there that he honestly doesn't talk about too much. I mean, he would occasionally talk about his mother Charcy, his grandmother Johnny May, his father Frank, who left him when he was only 13 months old, his brother Daryl, who died of a massive heart attack after a life of struggling with drugs and addiction. So for me, it was all about just fleshing out what the hell happened in Leeds, Alabama, that helped bring us Charles Wade Barkley. And a lot of that was going back and going through old newspaper articles, his yearbooks, and just writing down names and reaching out to as many people as possible, a lot of whom are still in Leeds or are still in Birmingham. And I was able to get a hold of a bunch of people, like his first basketball coach, Wallace Honeycutt. He was fantastic. He was essentially the first real father figure in Charles' his life. So he was able to give Charles the focus in basketball. Was able to track down his first girlfriend, Amy Shorter, who was a nice distraction for a kid who was called Jughead by all of his friends, just because his head was so big. Everyone could not get over the physical size of Charles Barkley's head, even as a child. So just getting insight from important people like that, high school teammates and friends who he would steal cakes with at the local grocery store when he was growing up. For me, it was so important to figure out the huge role that Leeds, Alabama had on him, and figuring out that family life, that personal life that helped shape him, that honestly he has not talked about in depth for his entire public life. So that was really my first and main goal there, guys.
Were you relieved in some way that he didn't want to talk? Because I can imagine he would have overwhelmed everything. I mean, it's very easy to see him just taking control and the book becoming the Charles Barkley version of the Charles Barkley story, as opposed to somebody who doesn't say much. And if you could try to prod them into telling their story, I could imagine. I mean, I could figure when the day he's like, "Yeah, I want to talk to you," you were like, "That's fine."
Yeah.
This is like,
No, David, go.
I was just gonna say, this is like an interesting contrast with the Bo Jackson book that we did, that Jeff Pearlman wrote, which we talked about the last time that we did one of these. And I think he said he talked to Bo Jackson for like 30 minutes. Like, it was just basically the sort of thing where Bo was like, "Yeah, good luck with the book, whatever. Like I don't really have a whole lot to say about any of this." Whereas like with Barkley, it's not like, if you talk to him at all, you're going to talk to him so much. It seems like you talk to everybody but him, which wound up being like a kind of an interesting way to understand his life, because he's, as you pointed out in the book, or as sort of emerges in the book, he's, by dint of his charisma, he's the center of every story that involves him. Like, it's just natural there's something elemental to it. And so there's something kind of cool about being able to experience Charles Barkley without, or not without, but around that sort of magnetic force that he is in every other, sort of capacity that he gets talked about.
Yeah, it's true. And I'll be honest, I was pretty disappointed when he said no. I totally understood it. I had a really good conversation with his agent, Mark Perman. I showed him the 81-page outline, chapter by chapter breakdown of what the actual book would be before I interviewed a single person. And when they said no, it actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise in some ways, because it just let me go wild, honestly, in that he's spoken so much. He's talked about almost everything at least one point or another in his life, that it was really up to me to find those newspaper articles, those TV interviews, those radio hits, those podcasts in which he's talked about those topics, because he's talked about it. It's all out there, and I really wanted to make sure his voice was included there. And it's funny, I would hear back from these people I would interview who say, I got a call from Charles, they're asking about it. He's asking about his book, and I would tell them he can talk to me. He's got my number. I wrote him at his home in Scottsdale. He's got my address. He's got my phone number, email. He's got it all. And I will always hear back, well, Charles doesn't want a book right now. I'm like, well, it's going to happen either way, and it's going to be a great book. It would be even better if you were actually involved. And
I think that's bullshit anyway. He totally wants this book. That's the thing about Bo Jackson. Bo Jackson sold Jeff Pearlman out like the day the book came out. He's like, if you want the story, talk to me. He's
I
like,
saw that.
Tried. And whatever. We don't need to talk about that. I don't know anything about Bo Jackson. That's total nonsense. Charles Barkley would love to sit on a panel with you, roast you, tell you everything's wrong, and then go buy you $150 steak, because that's his MO and it's fun.
Yeah,
That's what
I was. It's like, it's hard. You can't live your whole life as Charles Barkley and then at the last minute be like, attention's not really my thing. Like, sorry, dude. Like, ship has fucking sailed. Like,
be totally off brand, man. That would
right.
Like, what?
Yeah. So, well, I was gonna say the one thing, and I'm going to mention him because he's on a chat. We're probably not going to talk a lot of basketball, let's be honest. But the man of the people thing, which is often done, you'll read like politicians or books about celebrity actors, whatever. It's often phony. It's very calculated. It's fake. But occasionally you come across somebody who really is that person. And my Uncle Joe is on the chat. He was a bridge cop on the Walt Whitman, but his wife, my aunt, was a toll taker on the Walt Whitman for years. And they loved Barkley because he would show up and he'd learn their names and he'd fuck with them. And sometimes he'd give them $20 and somebody'd be like, I'm not paying today. And it was just an ongoing joke. And then I'd ask her about, like, what about Randall Cunningham? Like, I didn't say one word, but this is Charles Barkley driving back from Sixers games in 1988 at 11:30. Like, there's no other reason than that is the one thing he really does like people. He likes being, it's not just, I want to be the center of the party, which a lot of people do, but they want it to be about them. He likes to drag people along. I interviewed Jack McCollum when the Dream Team book came out. He's like, keeping up with Charles was a lot of work, but he always wanted there. And it wasn't the kind of insecurity thing where I need people around me. It's just like, if you try a little harder, life can be super fun and you can meet all these people. And that's why this book, as opposed to most of the other biographies I've read or we've had, there's always this deep well of sort of sadness. I mean, Last Dance, Michael Jordan, you're kind of like,
Yeah, this guy not doing great, doesn't seem happy.
Yeah.
Like
this biography was the opposite. Like, God damn,
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
You
very
really
rare to
can.
read a sports biography or really a biography of any kind and be like, mistakes were made. Like it wasn't always sunshine and
Don't-
stuff, but he's
don't
had
throw
mess.
don't throw a small guy through a window.
No, can't emphasize that enough. And we say that
Don't do
every
that.
episode. But I
Don't
think it's
spit
important.
on any children.
Right.
Either.
If you can
Stop
avoid it,
spitting on children, just
Nope.
as a whole.
if you were even thinking about it, this is our strongest possible recommendation against.
We don't
But it's-
condone violence.
But it's crazy to read one of these and to get to the end of it, or not at the end of it or whatever. I mean, he's going to be on TV in like a few minutes on TNT tonight. But that like, and be like, this guy had a hell of a life. Like he seems like he's having a lot of fun. Like for all the ways in which he screws up, there is this element, and not just a lot of fun in terms of like, you do a great job of sort of capturing how, and not without like putting your thumb on the scale, but just like how chaotic and weird the world of celebrity is. Like in the bit that you read where it's like a guy that they knew through Wesley Snipes, that's like of course, like there's a lot of like little cameos in there. One of my favorites involves the Las Vegas evening where he's running up a huge bar tab with like, it's like Danny Manning and Jaleel White or something like that, but it's just like Urkel is one of the dudes at the party.
Came in as Stefan or Kel. He came in as Stefan or Kel, and then Barkley's
Yeah.
back and Urkel.
Everybody was
And I was
going
like,
wild.
yep, that's exactly great. This is great.
But there is this element of just, for someone that has lived this much in public, he really seems to have also managed to have like a personal life. A lot of the charity that you describe, it's all very chaotic. It's all very ad hoc.
Yeah.
But busy guy, like just always doing stuff, not necessarily like going home and powering down. And
uncalculated to me, a depth of feeling like, what can I do right now to make the people that are within 10 feet of me have a better day? And sometimes it's $1,500 tequila. Sometimes it's like, I'm going
giving
to
food to homeless people under a highway
or just-
overpass or whatever.
or busting your balls in a funny way because this is boring.
Yeah. So like what, I guess this is a strange sort of question to ask because, I read the book, not to brag, you can read it too. It's out there for sale, but what kind of impression were you left with of him as sort of as a person in it? I mean, like you're basically like, I'm assuming that this is a matter of years of reporting on your end. Yeah.
Yeah. I started
hearing
in
stories about him for 2 straight years at least.
Yeah.
How did you feel at the end of it? Like where did you sort of land on Charles Barkley personally?
As someone who hopes to write some more books, I feel like I found a subject who's going to, I don't want to say spoil me, but this is definitely going to taint every other subject just because the vast majority of people I spoke to, hundreds of people, mostly said that he is exactly who he's been on TV and on the court. He is that guy. Now, there are parts of his personal life he just never gets into, period, for a couple of different reasons, mostly to shield his wife, his daughter, who he's kept out of the limelight. But everyone seemed to have a really positive experience with Charles Barkley, except like maybe Peter Vesey and a woman who he pumped a beer on once. And like, honestly, you've got all of these people, and he's touched so many people. Like I didn't anticipate interviewing, Vice President Dan Quayle and the CEO of Publix and a girl he spit on, and Dr. J and Shaq and Adam Sandler and all these different people. But that's a blessing of Barkley. He's just going to make such a big impact on your life that you just want to talk about it and feel good about it afterward. And even when he does screw up, and a lot of people pointing out examples when he has screwed up, whether it be on a police brutality or Black Lives Matter, he I do feel there is at least a sense of accountability on his end, that he knows when he screws up and he can admit it. The only time really he has admitted it was at the wonderful event of San Antonio, when he talked about the big old women. But
well, and it should be said,
yeah.
he's genuinely funny too. He's not like athlete funny or comedian funny. Like Adam Sandler's thing about like all the comedians were nervous to be around him because he's just off the cuff funny. Like that is a trait that not a lot of people have. Maybe my favorite, and I should say, anybody who's on here knows me, the Sixers are my favorite team. Barkley's my favorite guy ever, and so I'm not going to forget. This was the cake my mom made me for my 18th birthday. Rest in peace, Lolly. Look at that. This is a long relationship I've had with Mr. Barkley.
Oh, it's so beautiful. I don't even want to eat it.
And there's some new stuff in here I never heard. And my favorite has to be when, maybe people don't remember him, Terry Cummings was a very good basketball player. I believe he was rookie of the year, made a couple all-star teams. He was a Pentecostal minister. And Barkley sent a guy in the locker room to go give him a note that said, "Go tell him to fuck himself, but in a religious way." Like that is generally funny. And there aren't a lot of athletes who are funny. There's like Shaq kind of performative goofiness, but actually like off the cuff, which is probably also why people want to be around him. He's good at busting balls without making you feel like shit. That's not his goal. He just is a funny dude, and the world of funny athletes is very small, and it basically might just boil down to him and Muhammad Ali of superstars.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think it's totally fair too, and you can also make an argument too that he's the funniest athlete we've ever had. Period. I mean, you have someone who's hosted SNL 4 times, and he did really well each time, and he'll probably host it again before it's all said and done. And you have someone who, when I spoke to Adam Sandler, he just spoke so openly about him and Chris Farley with each other, Barkley and Farley, and how they would just bounce off each other, just make each other laugh. And Chris Farley, to me, is one of the funniest people ever. So it's like the fact that he was on that level with guys like that is just amazing to me.
It's comfortable in his own skin. He's not neurotic. I think that is half the thing. When he messes up, he's like, "Yeah, I messed up," or he, will stick by whatever beliefs. And he has a lot of sort of retrograde 80s small C conservative Southern Black people views that are not that uncommon, but he generally seems comfortable. Maybe it's almost sad that so few celebrities are comfortable in their own skin. Like that's kind of part of it. But you read your coworker Kent Babb's Iverson book, that's just depressing. Like every other page is a worse story about somebody and I guess it's just refreshing to see somebody at that level who can be that comfortable, knowing all the world is watching him every step he takes, but it does not seem to faze him, which is fascinating.
Yeah, and it really is a credit to him that he's been able to do this for so long. Because guys, and we alluded to it earlier, his life and his career really could have gone off the rails in several different spots. I mean, to a point that we would not be talking about him this way. I mean, between his fights and spitting on the little girl and his bar fights and the drunk driving and just one on top of the other, and running for governor to Alabama as a Republican, how would that play like right now? Like you think about all of these steps that either did happen and he bounced back from, or almost happened but didn't happen. And you have to wonder, like, how many different timelines are there where you don't have this version of Charles Barkley himself. So I'm happy we're here, but it really could have been a number of different outcomes here, though.
Yeah, it's
honestly.
one of the things that I found really interesting about the book that sort of emerges as a recurring theme. I think without you nudging it, it's just because, you know, this is it. I think authentically a recurring theme in his life, that there's this willingness, and I think it goes back to sort of in part to what Patrick said about his comfort in his own skin and stuff. He seems to lack, I think very much to his credit, the thing that makes some athletes immune to either insight or to apologizing seems to come fairly naturally to him, acknowledging when he's wrong. That this is not just exceptional among athletes. I think that this is like, there is a great deficit of that in the culture writ large right now, that this is just not a great country for people taking an L, or like acknowledging when they are talking out of their ass or don't know what they're talking about one way or the other. And in all of this, I mean, we've talked about, or you've mentioned a couple of times, the incident in which he spit on a little girl. I believe it was at a New Jersey Nets game. Shout out to my beloved former team. He was not trying to spit on her, that there was a man who was there behind her. This is a thing, though, that this happens a bunch of times in the book. It never got any less delightful to me. You found the girl who was spit on when she was 7 or 8. She's like a PT person in North Jersey right now. Like, there's like a decent chance that she's like helped my mom get mobility back in her knee or something like that. My parents love physical therapy.
That's great.
But there is, in all of those instances, that there's everybody that was wronged by him, again, as you said, with a few exceptions, has like some story of him being like, sorry, like, I fucked up, like, shouldn't have done that. Like, and that is the sort of thing, like, not just with the Iverson biography and stuff. I just think that does not, it seems to come naturally to him in a way that, like, not just to come naturally in the sense of like the way that like Hugh Freeze keeps talking about how forgiven he is every time he gets busted for some sort of mistake. Or there's a ton of creeps who are like into how, pre-forgiven or redeemed they are. Barkley actually seems to have like, it doesn't always function in the moment, but it does seem like the moral compass eventually like finds true north again.
To add to that, though, he's also like, he's pretty clear-eyed about stuff. He's like, I'm sorry that spit hit you. That racist guy deserved to get spit.
Right. But
like, what's bad is that you got hit by the spit, not the racist guy running up and down, dropping the N-word, and apparently it didn't even make sense exactly what he was doing. And then the woman you're talking about is like, actually, the lesson is that guy was the terrible guy. I was 8.
Are you comfortable speaking at all on, because you mentioned, it sounds like the guy was acting real bad. You mentioned that among his passions was conservative politics, which I grew up in this part of New Jersey. I know what that's a euphemism for. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that incident? What happened there in the aftermath? Is there anything that is not in the book that you would like to share at the moment, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, I did try to reach out to this guy's family because he did pass away in recent years. But Lauren, who was the little girl who got spit on, she had seen this guy. He had season tickets at the Nets. He was always very kind toward her and her family. And if Corey, to her, she just kind of lost it this one night in a way that is inexcusable at any point in time, allegedly saying the N-word toward Charles a couple of different times, and just really trying to get under his skin in just the worst, most disgusting way possible. And Charles, his case, he couldn't take it anymore. And Percy Hawkins told me, who I interviewed, he said, just seeing him through it like that, I really we had to stand by him because we heard it. We heard what Charles said, and if I was put in that same situation, I probably would have done the exact same thing. And that's Percy Hawkins, who just never talks. Period. Right? But the first time I interviewed him was the first time I heard his voice. So like to hear someone like that who is quiet and reserved say that, it really tells you how bad it must have been then. And in Charles's case too, back then, he really thought that could be the end of his career, period, just because there was already this perception of Charles being an angry black man. And he said that he used those first years in the NBA, he held on to this anger he had toward his father Frank for leaving him and his mom when he was only 13 months old, and toward his teachers for actually failing him and him not walking at his high school graduation in Leeds. He held on to the anger towards his father and his teacher for so many years, and when it got to that night, that anger just flowed over to the point that he spit on Lauren, and he thought there was no coming back on that. He thought he was not going to make it on the 92 Cream team. He thought he was definitely going to get traded after that. He was in a really dark place. So it really is to his credit that somehow he was able to just kind of dig out of what he calls the biggest regret of his whole life.
Before, if anyone has a question, put in the Q&A, because we're going to run the clip in a couple of minutes. I think we'll go a little 5 or 10 minutes longer this evening, just because this is enjoyable and it's the last show of the year.
Okay.
That is okay, of course. You're not. He's got a new baby. This is way better.
Yeah, I was going to say
this is work. This is work.
I will say he is much cuter, though. No offense or anything.
I want to ask. So let's do a little.
You mean? Because I look amazing.
It's true. Look
at this. Look at this holiday I'm bringing. The Wu-Tang Clan. Let's talk just briefly about his actual basketball career, because like I said, diehard Sixers fan, and I still had kind of forgotten how good he was. And I don't think if you're young and you only know him from TV, that happens. Like, people get older, but I don't think people understand that how small he was. He's only an inch and a half taller than Steph Curry, right? Steph's 6'3", I think. Barkley's 6'4.5", something. Led the league in rebound. Like, his springs were as incredible. The only guy that I remember having, and people didn't, the game was different then. There was a lot of catching offensive rebounds and then jumping off 2 feet. So it's like him and Dominique Wilkins were the guys. But I think his career, he was as good a player whose last name isn't Jordan basically for a decade, maybe Akeem. I mean, but he is, I went back and went through the whole wormhole stuff. I guess the question would be, is there any series, he wasn't on great teams, maybe the one against the Jazz where Stockton hit the thing. Do you think these guys' careers get forgotten because they don't have, because Michael Jordan beat them basically, or he lost in conference finals? People don't remember. I don't know. It's kind of crazy to me that his actual basketball career is not really remembered, and he was really, really good.
No, it's true. And I will just go back to the height thing first, because even though he's really like 6'4.5", he is extremely adamant that he is a 6'6", to the point that when Charles got pulled over for drunk driving, which he famously said he was on his way to actually get a blowjob from someone who was not his wife. The officer who I interviewed said when he pulled out his license, he saw a height being 6'4", and when he asked Charles about this, Charles was extremely adamant. They screwed up on 6'6", and like he was in as good a mood as possible for someone who was getting pulled over for driving. He was actually joking around with the officers, but when it came to his height, he just got stone faced. He's like, "No, I am 6'6". This is who I am. I am not 6'4".
To me, that like speaks to his comic instincts as much as anything. That whole story, and again, it's one that I was familiar with. You do a very good job retelling it. Has a real like Reno 911 energy to it, because he just won't fucking stop saying things that he really should not have been saying, and it is just seeing it laid out as you did, very straightforwardly. What a ride.
He claimed it was a joke, though. To be fair, he claimed it was a joke.
Yeah,
and the thing is, he claimed
his attorneys got pissed off once that made it into the police report, but the officer had to include it because the officer, his daughter was actually doing a ride along with them. So in case of any possible legal action, he wanted to make sure that she was protected. So he had to include that in there just because he had his daughter in that car. Which is wild to me.
Yeah,
but I
will
say
another little Reno 911 complication, little quarter turn on that shit. But it
feels very Arizona to me, even though I've never been there.
No, it has an Arizona energy about it.
Mind you, he was coming out of a party with Michael Strahan and Urkel.
It was Michael Strahan, yes.
Jaleel White, so the second Jaleel White reference on the show tonight.
Same party. I just had garbled who the other person there was.
Families matter.
Yeah.
So true.
Putting back to Patrick's point, though, there was a stretch of about 5 or 6 years in a row where his teams lost to a team that either won the NBA championship or went to the NBA finals. And at least several of those were against either the Bulls or Rockets. So even in the stretch where MJ is away, he runs into Hakeem Olajuwon, who probably ascended to being the top guy during that stretch, and lost both years in 7 games. So his luck in terms of just his playoff draws is one of the worst in NBA history, in my opinion, just because every year it was either Jordan, Olajuwon, or those good Jazz teams.
Yeah. And he never played with another Hall of. I mean, when he was young, but he never played with another Hall of Famer. You know, he played with very good players, but that second Hall of Famer is a big deal.
Stuff, but yeah, those Sixers teams, and this is not to pander to Patrick too. The early Sixers years, I think before I was really following basketball. I was a kid, See how badly mismanaged, because Barkley wound up due to some, I believe it was the Clippers mismanagement, which is like, talk about sort of recurring themes in NBA basketball history. The way that a really good Sixers team, a team that had won the title a year earlier, wound up with the 5th pick in the draft, and Charles Barkley it was 2 years earlier, I guess. So he was actually on the end of that, like Moses Malone, Dr. J, Bobby Jones. Like,
it should be said, Moses Malone made an all-star team with the Bullets after. You're talking about Roy Hinson Day. I'm not going to spend 30 minutes on, but if you want to see me melt down, Moses Malone made an all-star team the next year with the Bullets when we got Ruland and Roy Hinson. But yes, the Sixers destroyed. The Sixers destroyed what could have been a championship team, is what Dave's trying to say.
And a team that was like basically doing the thing that, obviously, as we keep saying, it probably doesn't bear mentioning at this point. Yes, the NBA was very different. Like, it's not so different that if you have a championship core, you then just trade away Like it wasn't even like trading away first round picks. Like it was just they got one deal wrong after another and managed to sort of over the matter of a few years delayer a championship team into basically Charles Barkley and Johnny Dawkins.
Yeah, and
Mike Cheminsky, which was
And Mike
fun.
Cheminsky,
G-Man. Mahorn.
love G-Man. But yeah, if they got to the Eastern Conference Finals in Chuck's first year there, and they lose to Boston, but everyone thinks this Philly team has a really incredible future with Barkley, Moses, Dr. J. Still had Bobby Jones there too. Like you still had a bunch of incredible talent, and yeah, year by year, they just decimated the team to a point that even when the Sixers were lined up with the first pick in the NBA draft, and if they had Moses Malone, they turned that, as Patrick knows, into Roy Tinson and Jeff Ruland and a couple other spare parts. And
This was a fun fucking show. This is a fun show. The holidays are ruined. And also, though, I want my Uncle Joe mentioned, though, and also Moses and Dr. J knew their time was coming. They actually passed the torch to him. They had kind of set it up. Like the whole thing was set up, and Harold Katz ruined it. So we're gonna stop that.
You want to put a pin in Sixers chat? Move on to
We're
something
gonna
else?
we're gonna run the clip because it's the holiday season. Then we'll have a little wrap up. We have no. If anybody has a question, ask it now. We're gonna run the clip so we can cleanse the timeline. Fucking Harold Katz. Okay. You can just hit play. They'll get the point.
I think it's a lovely message.
Philadelphia 76ers.
All right. Well, the point was
Did
you.
it do the thing?
No.
But there's Charles, and they sang. There you go.
Sleigh bells ring. Am I
You
listening?
get
What am I hearing
Charles
here?
singing "Santa Claus is coming to town," but you can see him in a hat.
Happy
Yeah.
holidays from the Philadelphia 76ers.
There you go. A voice from the past.
That's all you can really.
Well,
That's all you
Merry
need.
Christmas.
That's
I
all you
want-
need.
Message.
I'll say this. Charles really cared about spending Christmas back in Alabama. That his first year in Philly, he was so blown away when he found out he could not go home for holidays. So his mom and his brother and his grandmother actually visited him in the small apartment he had in Center City, Philadelphia, and all day they just spent watching soap operas and ordering food, and that was good enough for Charles Barkley, since he actually had no social life back then at all. It was all soap operas and all of.
He was very. We don't have time to get into it, but he was a very small town Southern dude. That is something that really comes through in the book in his Sixers years.
It
I want
really
to wrap
did,
up.
like, especially him as just like a young guy being like, wait, I have to play basketball on Christmas? Like the holiday? That's stupid. Like it
and just-
really like resonated with me. It's like, yeah, it is kind of stupid. I really appreciate that they do it, but it is pretty dumb.
Let me ask one more question, and then I'll do a little wrap up. But where do you guys think Charles goes from here? Does he just do TV for a while, and then, I mean, is there another act, or does he just kind of be Charles? I was trying to think of something that he could do, because he's had a generally kind of surprising, fun life. It seems I'd much rather be Charles than Michael Jordan at this point, or.
God, no question.
Do you see anything different, or you just think he's going to do this for another 10 years and then maybe fuck off to Hawaii or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you have any thoughts on something different he could do.
Well, I do think one possible act that could be a really fun final one for him. I know it was There's still a lot of stuff holding out there about who's going to buy the Phoenix Suns, and I know he's
Oh, I
expressed
didn't know that.
he's expressed interest that if former President Obama really is interested in actually buying them, then he would totally be on board as a minority owner in a city where he still lives and where he's a legend in. Now, that's probably not happening, but that
I never heard that though. That would be awesome. That'd be amazing. That'd be cool as hell, especially after
Yeah.
Sarver's racist bullshit. That'd be great.
Yeah.
it would be a shot of life for that whole franchise and city. I feel like if he did do that, I don't think he's staying for the extent of his 10-year extension at Turner, just because he has repeatedly said time and time again, I really don't want to be an old dude just talking out of my ass on TV. I do
Which
not
it should be
wanna
said
die on the set.
he's halfway there. He
Oh,
seems
yeah.
a little bored.
Yep.
He's
He gets fired up for the NCAA tournament because he
about to
has,
be 60.
he has a lot of money
It's
on the
not
NCAA
old, but
tournament.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. He's yeah. So I do think that eventually he's just gonna say, screw it. I just want to golf and drink beer and gamble and hang out with my grandson, because he does with him having his first grandson. You could tell it's a different kind of enjoyment for him that he hasn't experienced since having his own daughter. So I don't think he's going to be there for 10 years. I think we should just kind of appreciate him while he's here. But in terms of any other acts, as long as he doesn't do any golf organizations funded by Saudi Arabia, I think he's going to be in good shape. So
That sounds right. I don't want his last act to be awful. I don't want him to,
Yeah.
and I don't think he will, but he still seems to be just on the cusp of like in the wrong situation still.
But it's how he's lived his life, and here he is. Everybody still loves him. He somehow hasn't screwed it up yet. So let's hope.
It's once again, I want to show you the picture of my mom's cake. Rest in peace, Lolly. It's a great book, and as somebody who's read a lot about Barkley, there's all kinds of new stuff in there. I will say the one interview that really blew me away is you found the guy who was a day player at Saturday Night Live who wore the Barney suit, who got his ass kicked by Charles Barkley and seemed very happy about it.
Yeah, that guy's nothing bad to say about him
great.
either.
He's great. He got his
couple-
ass kicked by him too. Yeah, he got it.
Two things to wrap up. Our next show is live again. I'm just showing you the poster, but it will be January 26th at our favorite beer garden. And it's going to include a novel this time, Matthew Salesses. It's basically a Linsanity takeoff without all the evangelicalism and Harvard stuff, grittier, dirtier version. So come see Dave and I in person.
There's no substitute for the
no.
experience of meeting Patrick Sauer in real life.
And
Just
the
nothing
room,
like it.
the room has no windows.
Share. Anyway, yeah,
One day,
that'll
Patrick.
be fun. And
One
Timothy,
day.
thank you so much.
And this is our last show of the year. This is year number 3. Once again, if you ever watch this, we started this in the height of COVID because we were kind of bored and wanted something to do. It's not over. We're not done, but things seem a little more calm. And the nice thing about this year, Dave, nobody died. I don't know anybody who died. So here's to wrapping up the year, not on that.
Yeah, terrific. No more sort of slancha RIP toasts. We can just say thanks, everybody. And,
Yes, we can just
leave it at
thank you
that.
for coming if you watched it. And Kay has a very good organization they are starting, so I will tweet it out. But it's a good place to spend your money if you want to donate a little bit. So take us out. But this Barkley book is great. He's one of my favorites.
This is great.
Thank you,
This is
Tim.
a great
Thank you.
way not only to end Squawkin Sports for the year. This was our last Greenlight event for the calendar.
Woo!
Wow.
both virtual and in
Yes.
person. So sorry, that's
Oh
a
my gosh.
a little gremlin appears from the camera. Thank you all for showing up. This is a great conversation. I really appreciate you, Timothy, coming out and making time with a newborn. Congratulations on your book. I know it came out just a month ago.
Thank you.
That's a huge deal after years and years and years of work.
Years.
And considering that all the copy for the book says painstaking, sounds like it's actually a lot of fun to read. This was a fun conversation.
Buy it from
I hope so.
Greenlight. Buy it from Greenlight for
Everybody
your
calm down.
holidays.
Stop yelling.
Okay, Dave.
I
Also-
like that in Patrick's "Come meet me in person." There's no windows, like a threat.
Right. Thank you, guys.
So yeah, thanks everyone for coming tonight. Like Patrick said, our next one's in person at DSK Beer Garden. The link is here in the chat as well as on our website. It'll be in about a month and change. There's a novel and nonfiction. So if you're basketball fans, presumably you are.
Oh, right.
tonight.
Sorry, yes. Cookies, the host of Cookies are also coming. Andrew Kuo and Ben Dietrich. We have 3 authors. I forgot to mention
Yeah,
that.
The Joy of Basketball and The Sense of Wonder and Patrick and David and alcohol.
Yeah,
sure.
what do you need?
No
And
windows.
in person. All right. Thank you everyone for joining in the chat, for attending tonight, and happy, merry, be safe, and congratulations, Tim.
Bye, everybody.
Merry Christmas,
Thank you so
everybody.
much. Happy holidays, everyone.
Bye,
Take care.
Barkley.